Hey everyone, you're listening to our very first pop-up podcast. This is something new that we're trying. Aaron and I have tossed around the idea for a little bit now of just doing something separate from our scheduled episodes. So this is our first take at this. Just we always want to discuss current events and just other stuff that we don't always get to touch on all the time. So we're really excited to have Tim Sandars on. And many of you may know him from seeing him in our ad, our little commercial before each episode. We're not here to talk about the Omnia Radiation Balancer, but we are going to talk about 5G and how it's possibly linked to the coronavirus. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of confusion right now. So we really just want to touch on all that and really just kind of bring light to what we as humans can actually do to help prevent and stop all of this nonsense that we're hearing. So welcome to the show, Tim. How's it going?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Happy 444 today because, big portal for those who know. Great to be here and thanks for the opportunity to come on. It's going well. I mean, obviously, everyone's locked up. This is a real test of our obedience, I guess, in terms of what we're being told. And there's a lot of stuff flying around, as you said. And it's just a question of trying to apply a little bit of common sense to what's being told, because there's a massive amount of alarmism and, sensationalizing and just lying that's going on. I've been trying to sort of sift through to work out what the truths that resonate with me are. And I'm not trying to tell you this is the only truth because it's such a massive topic. There's all sorts of things going on in, Milan versus Wuhan versus, Korea versus, wherever else. And it's really difficult to know what's happening in each place. But there are some common themes that are developing. So I just wanted to give my views on that. There's also a lot of stuff going on about what viruses are and, whether they're contagious. And there's a lot of stuff that's being talked about in that respect, which is important because ultimately we got to get to the truth of that because let's face it, the markets are crashing, all of our jobs are being put on hold, and if truths need to come out, then they need to come out. And then the last bit that I represent through, I have to give credit to the scientist that I work with, who I met in South Africa a couple of years ago, and I based my product around. He has the ultimate knowledge on the holographic universe, right? Which is where and this might be the challenge that 5G and coronavirus and everything is challenging us to actually step into the knowledge and the power of, to understand who we are in the holographic universe, the fact that everything is energy, frequency and vibration, and what power do we have within that construct to actually, govern our lives and harmonize the things that are out of balance, because the two things that coronavirus and 5G have in common is that they're toxic, right? The virus is meant to be the virus that's caused by a toxin, and 5G is also toxic, and we know that because of all of the tests that have gone on 4G. So 5G being an extra 10 times, so it's said, and I'm going to come on to this in a second. It's that whole, what is it in our lives, in our society that's toxic, that we want to bring back to balance, and then what power do we have as individuals, as souls, as living, breathing beings, to actually bring that back into balance and then to restore society back to where we want it to be, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so just,
well said.
Yeah, very well said. And so a lot of people right now are scared. They just approved 5G to be, Trump just signed something that made 5G okay, whatever. People are flipping out about this right now. And I just want to kind of take away some of that fear. Like, can you explain to people why this might not be such a bad thing? Is it possible that they've already negated this and it's not negative anymore? Maybe they put an Omnia patch on all the towers. I mean,
well, I can't say that there's anything particularly good about 5G, other than it's a massive wake-up call for everyone to work out how their bodies operate, and then why this energy is bad for us, right? The one thing I'm going to say is that there's a massive amount of fear-mongering about what 5G actually is, right? I've seen lots of people plastering around every, message board. Oh, it's 60 gigahertz, which eats up oxygen and does this and does that and the other. And the reality is very different. The first phase of 5G, and I'm open for anyone to correct me on this because it might be different in every single country, right? It's too big a topic for me to monitor every single thing. But I do know that at the moment, 5G is not very common in London, for example. I have actually got a 5G phone and I can't get a 5G reception. There are some 5G masts going up here and there, right? But hardly anyone has a 5G phone. That's the first point I'm going to make. Hardly anyone has a 5G phone. As far as I know, we can look up the marketing stats and everything else, or the sales stats, but you need a 5G phone to connect to the 5G that's going to supposedly be put on our lampposts, right? And that's the one that, if you know the guy called Mark Steele, who uses all this language like genocide and kill grid and, it's a crime and all these sort of things, really just inciting a lot of fear, but often not really telling what's really happening. I know his heart's in the right place because he wants people to be worried about the future now, and that is a good thing. But right now, when we're talking about the virus and whether it could be caused by 5G, we've got to work out what 5G actually is being rolled out. I do hear that there are, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of masts that went up in Wuhan. That's what I heard. I haven't had that, qualified by anyone, but I've heard lots of reports about that. If that's the case, then that is serious. That's a serious step change up in electrification of the atmosphere. And as we know from my testing on the human body, and also from all of the peer-reviewed studies that have been done on radiation, there are biological effects on 4G. And the people that are allowed to study and measure the effects of 5G are also finding the same. But the thing is, 5G is being really kept under wraps by the industry, right? It's not telling you what it's doing, right? And you can't look at a 5G mast and go, oh yeah, that's 4 gigahertz or that's 6 gigahertz. It's supposed to go up to 60, but I haven't actually seen any spectrum dominance applications for the 60 gigahertz range. I think it starts off, 5G starts off as more 4G, right? So a lot of these towers that are going up, they're going to consolidate the 4G, and what they're doing is the phone industry is selling you a marketing ploy, which is like, yeah, we're the race to 5G, and we're going to be the best telco that's providing your 5G and everything else. Now, there's no doubt that everything is on a step increase. There's no doubt about that. But I just want to try and get real on that. And the points I have to make is that the 60 gigahertz seems to be massively exaggerated. Secondly, in order for 5G to work, it seems you have to have a 5G phone. It is the infrastructure that is going to be the foundation for all the Internet of Things and the street lights, beaming these rays at us eventually, which are going to be very, very toxic. But as far as I know, the first phase is just putting a lot of kind of extra 4G masts up, because we know that they don't have a range of much more than like 400 meters, right? So the masts that I see going up in London are, a long way apart. So by definition, they can't really be 5G. That said, there is a very good website where you can go on and you can type in where's the coverage, and it will show you all of the pink 5G masts. And there are quite a lot in London, but it's not full coverage for sure, right? So that's London. We need to probably do the same for Milan to see whether there's a correlation. The Wuhan stats don't exist on this map, obviously, because China is just a law unto itself. And, no one really knows what's happened in China, I don't think. So it'd be interesting if any of your viewers have a real, insider, on the ground record of what's going on there. So that's my first point, is that if you're going to sort of blame 5G, as many people are, then you've got to really work out what it is. 4G is 2.4 gigahertz. That's the spectrum range of frequencies that it's broadcasting. What version of 5G is going on in Lombardy, in Milan, in Italy, and what version is going in Wuhan? It needs to be a little bit more investigative work there, right? To actually say, once the gigahertz tips from here to here, then we're seeing that it's the toxicity levels are causing a reaction in the human body. If we can get to that level where we work it out, then we have something. But at the moment, just to try and blame 5G is a bit. It's not baseless, but it's kind of it's not accurate yet. It's just hysteria. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree with that. Especially, Aaron and I have talked about, we think the 5G and the virus might be related in China. Like there might have been when they kicked this whole thing off, it might have been hand in hand, the 5G working with the virus, that 5G weakening the immune system, people possibly getting sick from the flu, going to the hospital, then getting an injection with the coronavirus, and then that's how it spreaded. There's so many theories, obviously, but you said there's different types of 5G, so who knows? Like that might have been the case there, but that might not at all be the case here in the States or where you are.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Look, from my point of view, people getting upset about the fact that there is a link to 5G is actually a good thing, because it raises awareness of the fact that we can't go into 5G, because I've always said, because of my research on 4G, that 5G is very, very dangerous. And there was an article recently, it was interesting, which just showed kind of like how we're caught in this very strange, almost 1984 style situation where we're all locked at home, and then some people on social media are spreading these rumors about the fact that it's all linked to 5G, and then our national newspapers come out and start to tell us what to think. But not only that, they tell us that the Ofcom, which is the standards that govern what can and can't be said pretty much in the media, are going to start to fine anyone who makes a link between 5G and the virus, right? It's literally like, this is what you can and can't say, and that's happened. I can send you the link. You can put that in the notes a bit later on, but that's kind of what's happening. We're being told what we can and can't say, And I just want to make one point really clear, and I made this point on the last show, and I know you guys were quite surprised by this, but just for anyone who doesn't know this, the industry tests on 4G on any phone that gets put in your hand, the industry safety tests happen on a plastic model of a human being with plastic skin and fake blood on the inside, right? And what they do is, let's say that's the fake skin, the plastic skin. They put the phone next to that, and then on the other side there's a sensor that then detects whether there's any heat that goes from the phone through the plastic skin into the fake blood, right? What's missing from that test? A heart, brain, right? And all the electricity in the human body, right? Everything in the human body is electric. If I go like this, it's electrical current in motion, right? Everything is our mind projecting into our body an electrical outcome, right? So when the phone industry tests, they don't test on a living organism or living human being or a living rat even, right? So, what's happening in the British media is that they're saying there's absolutely no scientific basis for phones doing any harm. Well, they can say that because they think they're doing the right test, but that isn't the right test, because when they've done the tests on the rats, and the best report on this is the Bioinitiative report. So you can look that up as well. The Bioinitiative report has 4,000 tests that show all the links to all sorts of degenerative diseases caused by this level of radiation. Now, I come from the privileged position of knowing exactly, or in our view, but I do believe this is true, and I'm here to tell you what my truths are, so I'm going to tell you. I come from the privileged position of knowing what it is in a radiation field that does harm to the human body, right? And it's all about the spin of electrical current within the atomic wave field, right? So our bodies are made up of atoms and cells. Cells are a bunch of atoms. Basically, they both behave in the same way. And it's like that torus field with the 0 point in the middle and the donut, the torus field around it, that's held in shape by that 0 point in the middle, right? And then what happens is your cells, if you imagine that your cell is like that, like a circle, the 0 point is wanting to be in the middle of that, holding that light ring in shape at all times, that ring of electrical current. You know, I said everything in your body is a light ring, is electrical current, and so on. At the smallest level, at the cell and the atom it is. And the radiation wave field comes along, and its 0 point is not in the middle. It's moving around, right? So when that cell meets this radiation field, this starts to move around, right? It picks up, because of the resonant effect, it picks up the imbalance of the radiation field, and it starts to become imbalanced itself. Now, if this is radiating like 4G, it'll be at this frequency. But when it goes to 5G, it's going to be at this frequency, right? And it's going to bring even more intense imbalance to the human cell. And the point is that we just don't know what that 5G, firstly, what it is, and secondly, what it's going to do to the human cell. We don't know that yet. I think the only person that's really researched that and sort of spilt the beans on it is a guy called Barry Trower, who was a whistleblower from the Royal Navy, I think. And when he was in the Royal Navy, at least the British Armed Forces, I can't remember exactly where, but his videos are all available online. And they did testing on frequencies that could be used as military weapons, right? And they found that all of those frequency ranges, you know, let's call it between 12 gigahertz, 24 gigahertz, and up to 60 gigahertz. All of those ranges could be used on the battlefield, which is why everyone's talking about the fact that it's a weapon, you know, it's, you know, all these sort of things. And, you know, that I share that concern, right? I do share that concern. But what I said earlier is also what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, which is the reality, which is that it's more like right now there's just a densification of the 4G going on. And then the second phase will be the really scary one with the street lights and the, you know, every 200 meters you'll have a lamppost beaming this stuff down on them. Now, like I said before, there may be some people who are living in towns where that's happening already. It's not happening where I live. That's all. So I can only speak for that. So yeah, there's the anomaly about, you know, the media telling that there's no basis for any scary stories about 5G. Well, actually, we need to really be clear on what the truth is, which is that the biological tests on 4G are showing that there's harm. The phone industry test shows that there's no heat, right? But we know at Omnia that it's not heat that causes the damage, right? It's actually the vibration. It's the uncenteredness of that wave field, which gets picked up by the cell. And then because of the electrical imbalance in the cell, that is the precursor to disease. And so with 4G, that will happen over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then with 5G, because it's a lot faster and more intense, it'll happen over what? 4 years, 1 year, maybe overnight. We just don't know, because there are, you know, scientists out there that are just saying there's a tipping point. You know, as soon as it tips over that point, it's like immediately very, very toxic. So I'm just here to say, I know what I know, but I have no idea what level of 5G, when it gets turned up, will create that tipping point in the human body. And I don't think any of us know. And there's a famous speech by Senator Blumenthal, which I'm sure you guys have seen, but just for your audience, you can look this up as well. Senator Blumenthal asks all of the guys from AT&T and Verizon and all those guys, he says, can I see all the safety testing that you've done? Can I see the documentation? You know, how much money have you spent? And they turn around and say, we haven't done any. Yeah. and we spent $0 on safety testing, and we just find out from the FCC whether it's safe or not, and they just give us a stamp and we just put it in. And it's like, this is insane. We would not get in a car that wasn't safety tested, right?
Yeah. Well,
And yet we're putting all these grids up that aren't.
That's just like the standard operating procedure of our planet right now. What's really going on behind the scenes. There's something more, and we're actually seeing that come to light right now with what's taking place with this virus, which I think, I gave it air quotes. I do think there is a real virus, possibly, but I do think that there's a lot more at play than just a virus. I know, I just hope that there are malevolent forces at play right now that would prevent the worst case scenario from happening, as far as the 5G towers and whatever else. So the big question on the virus, what are your thoughts as far as, what are your thoughts on the coronavirus itself?
Yeah, well, look, I'm not a doctor or anyone that can speak for what the truth is, but you're just going to get my thoughts, which I think I'm entitled to, although it's becoming more and more, like I said, 1984, like, you speak out of turn, you could be fined or whatever it is. But what I'm interested in at the moment is the debate that's being put out there about what is a virus, right? I'm not necessarily concerned about whether coronavirus is being detected in lots of people, although there are doubts about that. And there was a really good commentator, I think his name was Robert Young, who was on Kerry Cassidy's show recently, and he was just talking all about virology. And there are like three major commentators on this that I know of, like Thomas Cowan, another guy called Tom Barnett, who's just a social influencer or whatever, and this guy Robert Young. And what they're saying to us, and this is the reason why this is so important, is because, if the truth is something else, then we all collectively need to take ownership of pulling that truth up and into the light, right? So, because, like I said, our markets are crashing, our jobs are on the line, et cetera, but what they're saying, which is the really interesting point for me, is that a virus can't be contagious, right? It is the body's response to a toxin. So if I, drink a toxin or I'm exposed to a toxin, then my body will react and excrete all of these toxins through the cells. And when the toxins come out in the cells, that's when the virus comes out in the body, right? So the idea that they're saying, which I'm interested in, but it's not my idea, right, is that, if you blow all of that gunk out into a handkerchief and give it to the next person, they can't catch anything from that, because ultimately that is just the body's response to the toxin. The way that the next person gets sick is not by touching a door handle that someone else has touched. It's by, it's by exposing themselves to the toxin. So the next question comes, what is the toxin, right? So that is their school of thought. I'm not saying that's mine. I'm just saying I'm interested in looking at that line of inquiry, because, this is a great time where we have to, work out whether we're being fooled or not, right? Ultimately. Yeah. And then find out what the truth is, and then, be that new truth and step into that new light, right? Which is what Omnia is all about. We're all about bringing harmony to an imbalanced or a toxic situation, right? That's what we try and pride ourselves on. So, and that's what the Omnia Radiation Balancer does as well. So we balance those fields out. So that, look, there's all sorts of stories that I hear, and I'm sure you've heard them as well, about the figures being massaged, and someone who dies from 4 different things, but then they get coronavirus. Oh, the cause is coronavirus. All sorts of things. I can't substantiate those. I'm sure all sorts of things going on in hospitals without any viruses that are mistakes or
Yeah, I did hear that like 88% of the deaths in Italy were people who died with the coronavirus, with COVID-19, not from it. So they, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but so that would mean that these people are just dying carrying the strand, but they're not actually dying from it. And they're just taking whatever way, if they die from the flu or a car accident or whatever. And then
they're making it look like they died from COVID-19 when that's not the case.
And what they're not doing is people are recovering from this. People are bouncing back from this. Well, they don't take that off the list of cases anymore. So it's just they literally have, if you turn on CNN or any world news around here or national news, at the top right, they have like a counter going with the death count and the cases. And it's just constantly going up like a freaking, like a stock market, like a Dow exchange or something. But it's
so that is the machine in action. That is literally us manifesting the outbreak, right? That is literally us being programmed, seeing that ticker. It's like the only thing that comes into our body is like, oh my God, I'm scared, I might be next, everything else. And then as soon as we get into that zone, then we start to, again, lower our immune system, because fear and electromagnetic fields from 4G and 5G both have the same impact on the body. They lower your immunity, and then they make you more prone to the virus. And I just did a very interesting video with the scientist who makes my product, who, like I said, is an expert on the hologram. And he has some very interesting things to say about that, which was kind of, my third point in all of this. We've talked about what level of 5G is present, and how it's important to know exactly what that is, because otherwise, like you were saying, it's probably a mix between a lowering of the immunity and an actual, toxin, and, there's actually sort of lots of people talking about the patent as well, isn't there, for the COVID and so on. And then the second bit is like, what is a virus, and do are viruses contagious, and that needs to come to the light, and we need to decide what the truth is there. And then the third part is really interesting, because this comes from the guy that I work with, who I consider to be a real genius, and he's sort of carrying on a lot of Tesla's work, because of the energy, frequency, and vibration side of things, and understands exactly what the importance of man as a thinking being is, because in his view, in this hologram, or the holographic universe, where every atom is a ring of light that's in motion, and it's living and dying, living and dying, living and dying in rapid succession. So it's flicking on and off, flicking on and off. Every one of your cells, every one of the atoms in this wall, in this desk, on this computer, they're all, basically atoms that are flicking on and off at different frequencies, right? So the difference between my body and this wall is that, this appears solid because it's going at a different frequency. So in that holographic universe, we basically are mental beings with incredible mental powers. And the most potent force in the holographic universe is the human mind, or the human desire, or the human intent, right? So when you step into that understanding of our own powers within the holographic universe, then we start to enable ourselves as resolvers of this situation, manifestors of the change that we want, rather than the scared people, who are throwing stuff around in fear and agitating everyone, and basically, I think everyone has to find their own way through this, right? There will be people who go and burn the 5G masts, and they'll get arrested, and then they'll start complaining they couldn't get on Instagram the next day. And then there's people, like me, I guess, who at the other end of the spectrum go, okay, look, we need to take responsibility for all of this, because we asked for this. We asked for Instagram, and we asked for Facebook, and I asked to Zoom you, and we asked for more and more bandwidth. But none of us realize the consequences. So we all have to take responsibility for the situation that we're in and bring the truth up so we can actually work out what the next steps are. Because certainly just succumbing to the next stage of 5G is not a good option. That's my view. And I've tested everything. I've tested my own body. I've seen all the other reports that have been, Bioinitiative report, and the ehtrust.org is a very, very good resource for all of those reports. So I've seen all of that. But what I like about the scientist I work with is two things. Firstly, he's working with a new unit of energy, which is called Deca energy. And this is where it gets a bit spiritual, but he's a massive advocate of the fact that science is spiritual, because at the center point of that atom is that still magnetic point, which has awareness, right? And we can actually interact with that 0 point, and we can bring about what we want in this world. There's a lot of talk about manifesting and about, anything from The Secret to meditating to, declaring intentions and gratitude and all sorts of other things that create your reality. And so I think that the combination of coronavirus and 5G is here as a massive wake-up call to the whole of humanity to work out, first of all, what energy is, and almost kind of what spirit is, where spirit is within the atom, what the true rules of science are that govern that atom, therefore everything in existence, and then our relationship to that 0 point at the middle of each atom. Because, and this is just coming straight from my inventor friend, Dr. Ilija Lakicevic, that 0 point in the center of every atom in this universe of free will is listening all the time to what we are intending, right? So if we intend for an electrical grid to be set up, right, to almost enslave the masses, so that if I want to get electricity, I have to come in and pay for it, right? There's a charge, right? So you set up a grid. The grid is based on generation, extraction, and payment. That whole cycle means that I come along and go, yeah, I'll take it off the grid, I'll pay for it, and repeat, repeat, repeat. So if you set up that grid, then in this universe, that electricity is then, it's then kind of poisoned, It's poisoned by that vibration of uncentredness, right? And this is the first time that we've held that electricity grid next to our ears or our genitals, whatever else, right? So he's the first person that's made me understand, I get it. This is all about energy, vibration, and frequency. Yes, there's biology, because when the toxins come into the body, you get biological effects. So the biology reports are really useful to know that, these toxins get, there's everything: infertility, DNA strand breaks, endocrine system damage, cancer has been very, very strongly linked to 4G radiation, etc. But that's the biological side of this. And before that happens, and this is exactly what Thomas Cowan and Tom Barnett and Robert Young, before the chemical reaction and the biological reaction happens, there's the electrical side of it. So maybe all of this whole situation is challenging us to make a real breakthrough in our understanding of the electricity in our bodies, the importance of the centeredness of that 0 point, because when we're in the love frequency, that 0 point is right in the middle. And when we're not, it strays around, right? So everything is looking to be in that perfect circle, a perfect donut shape, right? With that 0 point in the middle, which is magnetic, which is holding the spin ring of electrical current around it in a perfect shape. So when we have balance, centeredness, and a relation, I'm not going to get too technical, but there's then a relationship between the compression of the light ring and the expansion into the ether, because that's the bit that, you know, repeats and repeats and repeats, causing frequency. So when there's a balance between the compression and the expansion, you have the 0 point in the center. And when your intentions are good, you also have the 0 point in the center. So if we all learn that and step into that understanding, then we kind of bring that new civilization with us, right? So when we tune into that understanding, we actually bring that new civilization forward, where potentially we could make energy free. And that's the second part that he represents, which is a new unit of energy called the Deca, which is a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting. Like, you know, it's really exciting because it's an alternative to electricity.
It is exciting. Yeah. And Aaron and I both agree with the spirituality and science being intertwined as one. That's how the Germans did it back during World War II. That's how they surpassed us with their anti-gravity tech, and obviously with some help from another force, I guess you could say. So I definitely agree with that. I also, so if people really are getting sick, if this 5G, if this radiation is hurting your immune system, so it's essentially we would all have some form of radiation poisoning. Am I right about that? And then should we be focusing on detoxing from radiation poisoning as opposed to trying to find a cure to the coronavirus, let's just say?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I don't know enough about the biology of corona, but what I do know is that there's a lot of there's a lot of gunk in your lungs and so on, which could be removed by certain malaria tablets or something like that. And there's lots of alternative solutions that are being presented, and then they're being dismissed by the mainstream media, which seems to not exactly be on the side of a solution other than vaccines, right? And that's another issue that I don't want to talk about today because it's just too inflammatory, but I think you can guess what I think of those. But one thing's for sure, right, which is that we know that radiation from phones lowers the immune system. It represents a stress to the human body, an electromagnetic, or as we call it, the magnetoelectric, because that still point in the center of the atom, the magnetic point gives birth to the electric ring around it. So it's magnetoelectric, not electromagnetic in our books. But small detail, the magnetoelectric field of a radiation field is imbalanced. And when it comes into contact with us, it causes our immune systems to become weak. What the tipping point is for us to become toxic inside, like super toxic, no one's quite sure at the moment, but at the moment they're delivering a small dose of toxins. It's almost a little bit like smoking, right? If you smoke cigarettes or whatever, you're having a little bit of toxin, but your body can deal with it, right? And then it's like, at what point does those cigarettes become so strong that the body immediately tips into toxicity? And we just don't know what that is yet, right? So in my book, there is a virus. It's being detected. There is something that's happening that's causing it. If you believe the mainstream, it's because it's super, super contagious and can be just spread by looking at people, that sort of thing. If you believe the alternative doctors, I guess you could say, they're saying, well, actually, no, there must be another environmental threat. And that's the way that viruses operate. From my point of view, whatever happens, you should balance all the radiation fields in your life, right? Just take that out as a risk, right? And that's what I do. That's what I represent. I sell these stickers here. These stickers have conscious energy in them. The understanding of that will take you on a massive journey into quantum physics to understand that there's actually spinning rings of light within this patch that have been programmed to meet the radiation field and set it back to a balance that is in the middle, rather than going around like that, sets it into the middle. like that, so that there's nothing for the human cell to dissonate with. And we prove that that works again and again and again. Muscle testing is one of the easiest ways that I test, and people go super strong. But we've just done some heart rate variability testing as well, which shows that the body's stress levels, basically, you take a baseline, and there's a machine that's very popular in Russia, because Russians spent decades working out machines that could tell them who the best astronaut would be, right? So they used these machines to measure the rhythms of the heart and all of the rhythms of the organs in the body, and then tell them who is the most resilient person that they can chuck up into space, right? So they built all of this biorhythm technology, and it's really useful right now because, when you read all of the heart rhythms in the body and you say, okay, let's take a baseline. So then your stress levels are there and your electrical energy levels are there, right? And then I watched a video on a phone for 15 minutes. The stress levels went right up and the electrical energy levels went right down. And then we put our patch on the phone and then we went back to normal. And what I will say, just to put a real context on that, is that radiation is all about proximity, right? This is the one thing that a lot of people are missing, right? Which is that radiation is all about how close you are to the field, right? And when you're holding it, right, holding a 4G phone in your hand right now should be a lot more dangerous than walking underneath a mast, which is like maybe 100 meters away or something like that. Yeah. I know that there's a balance that needs to be observed between the actual frequencies and what they're vibrating at, and the intensity of the wave field is important for sure. But when I put my radio frequency meter up against this, it goes berserk, right? And that's 4G, right? So my point is, if it's 5G that's been put up in masts everywhere, and not many people have a 5G phone, then is what 5G is bringing to us that much worse than what we're doing right now, which is putting these things in pockets and so on. So I'm just calling out any anomaly that I see, right? But like I said, once you've got one of these on your phone, that will balance out the energy, and we're proving again and again that it works. And insofar as that leaves a little bit of a question mark over what is definitely causing the virus. And I've just done a video about this, and this could get me into trouble, but I'm not sure if I care anymore.
Now's the time. Now's the time to be talking about this. What else?
Right, exactly. What else are we going to do? We're just going to suffer and have everyone, succumb and all the rest. But I didn't touch on what Dr. Lakicevic told me, and I'm just going to tell you what he told me. So I sort of take myself out of that blame equation. But in the holographic universe, the principle is that anything that exists is inside me, right? As a fractal of the whole, right? So if I invent a new virus, right, in a lab, for example, if I invent a virus in a lab and then I put it into someone in Wuhan, for example, lots of examples here, then as soon as that goes into one person, it goes into everyone, because we are all fractals of the whole, right? So ultimately, that virus then becomes part of us, right? And from that moment on, it depends, because all things are created in the same way. They're created with thought patterns, right? And you'll have to go into his science to really get into this, because I can't give it a good enough or strong enough explanation right here, but I'll direct you to his papers. But ultimately, his summary is that the activator of that virus within you is fear. So, yes, you can draw a map of all of the 5G masts around the world, but you could also, and the correlation between that and the virus. You could also draw a map of the media around the world, and draw a correlation.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting that out there as another thing to think about and to get to the bottom of.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yep.
And I think that I said this when the virus first dropped. It's like the hypochondriac theory. Hypochondriac is someone who believes they're sick and to the point where they become sick.
Yep.
And that's what the media.
Well, it's like the placebo effect is the same thing.
Yeah.
They give people a sugar pill or something that's nothing, and they tell them it's this amazing thing that's going to heal, and then it does that because they believe.
Yeah.
So like you're absolutely right. Like we're the ones creating that.
Yeah, and I think that's true though, because once they're putting that out there enough, and they get that fear, is they're trying. We're trying to work on the tipping point, get the critical mass to enlighten the planet. Well, they're working to get the tipping point to go the other way. So it's a constant battle. It's going like this all the time. So if they can get that fear just up here a little bit, then is it not our own consciousness that is creating the virus? I said that a long time ago. I made a post about that. It's part of it.
So in that situation, what I said, what I've been saying to other people as well, because so many people are bombarding me with stuff that's just like, alarmist, sensational, catastrophic stuff. I'm trying to say to people in the only way that I can, because I'm not a spiritual leader or anything like that, but I just say, look, imagine you've got a bubble of about 2 meters around you, and that's the only thing you're responsible for. Whatever's happening over there in Wuhan is happening over there, and you're not responsible for that. Whatever's happening over there is happening over there, and you're not responsible for that either. But you are responsible for what you put in your bubble, right? And what you believe, and what you stand for, what you resonate with. And right now is the time to be filling that bubble with what you want to see in the world, right? Rather than what you're concerned about, worried about. Of course, be aware of that, be compassionate to any victim of any virus and everything else. But ultimately, what do you want to see in terms of like the truth, in terms of the balanced society that we want? We are masters of our own 2 meter bubble, right? And ultimately, if we all walked around with the 2 meter bubble that said, this is where we want to be, then that will happen. That is our power to create our holographic reality and to actually intend that going forwards. But right now I see a lot of people going into that catastrophe situation, and then we lose that power. We lose all of that power, and now's the time to become aware of that. I'll just draw a parallel, right? Because it's interesting. When I do muscle tests on people, we often just muck around, right? So a muscle test is kinesiology. It's where you basically can hold your arm out and you pull down on your arm and you see how strong you are. And then you put your phone in your hand and you see how strong you are. And most people are struggling because there's a stress that's created by the phone. And if you were allergic to milk and you were holding milk, you would also go weak. And I know that because I'm allergic to milk. And that's what happened to me a long time ago. So all of this stuff is important. It's all my journey is full of like little hints that, breadcrumbs that got left around. Now, I muscle test people with phones and they get really surprised at how weak they go when they hold the phone, right? I've stood there with people with no protection on a phone, and I've said to them, let's say a prayer, right? And I say a prayer which is something I'll say what the prayer is. I say, by that which I am, through the white Christed light, I now call forth the shield of power that I am. That whole expression has a shielding in it and a protective element that brings in the highest form of light around, right? That's the power that we have. We can summon that light, and the people go super strong. No protection on their phone, they go super strong. The problem with that is that you have to say it all day because it's in your pocket all day, right? Yeah. So that's what we do with Omnia, is that we perpetuate, we make that permanent, that balanced light, that we make that energy permanent in the sticker, and then we harmonize all of that. So, but I said that to make the point that we could actually say the same thing about a certain virus. You could adapt that expression, which I've just said, about the virus. I'm not telling you that that's going to save you, but I am telling you that we have that power to say that intention.
Absolutely. Wow. So this has been amazing.
Yeah. This has been fantastic.
There's so much here that was talked about. You're definitely shedding light on something that people need to know about. There's a lot of confusion about 5G. We know that. And the biggest thing is people just simply don't understand it. So I hope that this helps anyone who's watching, at least give them some type of hope, or at least let them start to realize that they have the power to navigate through this world in their bubble and create the reality that they want to see.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing about that, which gave me a massive amount of hope, because, I'm not on here to create that scaremongering, fear-mongering thing. But the best piece of spiritual advice I was given was that, if you imagine what I know as the ascension process, where we're going into, another dimension potentially, and that's why all of this, crazy antics are happening. Imagine that it's already there, right? It's already created. It's already done. It exists. And all we have to do is tune into it. And then we kind of resonate with it, and we get into that, we actually become the bridge into that dimension, into that reality, into everything else. That's where we want to be right now, filling our bubble with love, good intentions, peace, harmony, anything that's good, right? Because that will just get us there, because we're in literally on that pathway right now. And anything that's not like that, you need to be really checking yourself and saying that is not of my highest service. And that's the message of hope that I would leave everyone with, because we're all responsible for our little 2-meter bubble. And if we feed it the right stuff, then we'll all get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this and spreading your light. I'm going to take this time to remind everybody to say a prayer also, not just for themselves, but for the whole planet, for everybody. If some of these theories we are hearing are true, especially about these children being rescued from the sex trafficking, I don't know if any of that's been confirmed, but a lot of evidence is lining up for it to be a highly likely possibility. And it's hard to ignore. So let's just please say a prayer for all of these children, not just the children, everybody who's being affected by this. The people, the nurses and doctors who are thrown into this. They never signed up for this. So next time, we're doing a mass meditation or we're saying a prayer, let's just keep all this stuff in mind. Thank you, Tim, for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this. If you are tuning in right now, just try and keep that positive mindset, and remember, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's we'll just end it on that. So thanks. Yeah.
Love you, brothers. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
Aaron, give us some last bit of enlightenment advice here before we go.
Yeah, I just want to say, everyone, stay in your heart center, stay in peace, and focus on what you want to create, not what is around you and the fear and everything else. Basically, reiterate everything Tim just said.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that's the most important thing right now.
And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Again, make sure, if you're interested at all, check out one of the Omnia patches. The link will be below. They do work. Anybody wants to message me, I'll tell you my personal testimony. I personally think it changed my life. I was struggling, and I never put 2 and 2 together that it was possibly the radiation that was hindering my existence. So anyone who wants to message me, I'll be glad to talk to you about that. And everyone, enjoy your evening and stay safe. And please stay 20 feet apart from each other. 6 feet is not 20. Enough.
Don't even look at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't even.
All right, guys. Good night. See you next time.